going on, everyone? It's Monday, October 7th, 2019, and we are removed from this weekend of all professional wrestling events, WWE related. Thank Christ for that. Okay, I am going to just come flat out and say this. I am really pressed for time right now to do anything FSWR related. My work schedule is just really not working in my favor right now, and if I don't get this video out there recorded and edited before, like about 1 o'clock, then this video is probably not going to be uploaded until Tuesday. And I already had to delay the review series edition an extra day just because I never had time to sit down and edit the show after recording it. So that just kind of sat on the back burner, and I feel kind of guilty about that because I promised Monday and Friday uploads and was not consistent with it. So normally the Monday edition of the FSWR report is a news bulletin / weekend events recap. And like I said, because of the way my work schedule was laid out this week, I just really have not had a lot of time to sit down and take notes and really look at the wrestling world right now and get ideas together for the show. So this is not going to be an extremely long news bulletin or news video. The only thing that I'm going to talk about, or the only things that I'm going to talk about, were the WWE SmackDown from October 4th, and I will also cover the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. So no news this week, just the weekend event shows, and I think that'll keep me occupied for about a 30-minute time span. So normally these videos tend to run a little longer, but like I said, with just the way things went, I'm kind of rushed, I'm kind of pressed for time here, so this is what you get. I apologize. I hope things work out a little better this week so that I have time to sit down and gather some news together and come up with a better discussion or talking point for next week, but this is what you get now. So I have a lot to say, particularly about the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, but the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about SmackDown, because I did watch that show in its entirety. I did take an adequate amount of notes for that show, so there is a decent amount of content to cover there. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way first. Before I dive into everything, I always like to get these preliminary plugs in there. If you're checking out the FSWR channel for the first time, thank you. This is the 5 Starr Wrestling Report YouTube channel. We cover news and weekend events on this channel every Monday, and then every Friday we have a review series edition where we cover MLW Fusion, NXT TV, and AEW Dynamite, all 3 shows in succession. So if you're into that sort of thing, and if you like what you hear and view today, please go ahead and comment down below, rate this video if you don't mind, and please subscribe and click that little bell icon to keep updated. Like I said, I'm usually consistent with my uploads. Sometimes things don't work out and I don't get around to uploading until a day or two later, but normally you will see Monday and Friday episodes. So just roll with that for the time being. All right. WWE SmackDown, October 4th, 2019. This is the premiere episode on Fox. And first thing that I will say about this show, I really dig the new set they came up with. It's kind of got that old school WWF SmackDown vibe with the spiral outlines around the entrance. And also the opening pyro did give the show a livelier feel. So both of those get a thumbs up. Vince and Stephanie opened the show by coming out and basically welcoming everyone to the program. They didn't do a whole lot more than that. It was very bizarre, but I guess their mindset was we already crammed like 1,200 things onto this program, so let's just get in and get out. So after the opening video, Becky Lynch comes down to do a promo. She says that she's here to kick someone's butt, which the crowd pops to. This leads to King Baron Corbin coming down to suck the life out of the building for a minute. He asks Becky if she still thinks she's the man. She challenges him to a fight, essentially. And that is when The Rock's music hits, and the crowd goes absolutely ballistic for this. And just for the record, it should be noted, everyone, The Rock, still a bigger star than any wrestler in WWE put together. He referred to Corbin as a cheap Burger King knockoff, as well as a 35-year-old virgin dressed up like he was at Comic-Con. I guess this was an inside reference to the AEW crew attending a Comic-Con event. I really don't know. Anyway, Rock's promo was awesome. Becky played off of him well. Corbin made a good punching bag villain here. And eventually, Becky and Rock took out Corbin. Rock gave him the people's elbow, and that was that. The segment did start to drag by the end, but it was still fun. Like I said, nobody in WWE today is even a quarter of the megastar that Rock is. And if you need confirmation for this, just listen to how the people react to him throughout the entire skit. So, there you go. He is a gem to behold. And everyone else in the company today is just, well, they're just there. Becky Lynch and Charlotte versus Sasha Banks and Bayley. Why is Bayley still dressing in her old gimmick? Why does she still come out to the ring with her babyface music? Why does she still have the air dancer balloons? Why am I asking any of these questions when I already know the answer? I don't know. Maybe because somewhere in the very back of my thoughts, I still hold on to this deep hope that WWE will put more thought into their storyline and character continuity. Apparently that's still too much to ask in 2019. And upon seeing the main event of Hell in a Cell, it's obvious that this is not something that they are consistent with. And it really sucks that this was the only thing that I could think of during the entire match. Like, the match is actually pretty good in hindsight. Becky and Charlotte ran wild for a bit. They got a brief heat sequence on Charlotte, which bled into the commercial. When they came back, Becky pretty much immediately gets the hot tag and runs wild on Bayley. And at this point, Becky and Charlotte pretty much dominated Sasha and Bayley for the remainder of the match. There was that little awkward sequence where they were all giving each other elbow shots in the middle of the ring, and Becky just kind of looks around like, all right, when the hell are we setting up the next spot? But Becky ends up hitting Sasha with a leg drop off the top rope. Charlotte hits the heels with a moonsault to the outside. She immediately tosses Bayley into the ring, locks in the figure eight, and Bayley taps out. It was great. Didn't go too long. They didn't do a pointless double heat sequence, which I was absolutely anticipating. They didn't bore us to death with 1,500 rest holds and chin locks. Like I said, all the heat pretty much happened during the commercial break. So the match, I give a thumbs up. But the fact that Bayley still dresses and comes out with the same entrance music as her old baby face, it just makes me angry. It's lazy writing, and it absolutely sucks. And I know the WWE defenders are going to say, well, the gimmick is that she's condescending. I don't want to hear it. It's lazy writing, it's paper-thin storytelling, and it reeks of Vince and WWE creative putting little to no thought into anything they do anymore. We had a backstage interview with The New Day. Kofi was asked about his thoughts on being the underdog going up against Brock Lesnar. He said he's always been seen as the underdog, whether it was wrestling Samoa Joe, Randy Orton, what have you. And Big E and Xavier said some stuff that I really didn't take note of. Kofi pretty much said he didn't want Big E or Xavier to accompany him ringside, which, looking back at it in context, would not have made a bit of a difference, but we'll get to that. I thought this Aaron Andrews interviewer did a pretty fine job. You know, WWE has a knack for presenting every one of their interviewers like a block of wood. At least Aaron sounded genuine with her questions. You know, she seemed a little nervous there, but it didn't sound like she was reading anything verbatim from a script, which is very fresh in this company. So good on her. And for their sake, I hope they use more interviewers and reporters like her in the future instead of the deer in the headlight interviewers they have today. Someone's got to show a bit of personality on camera when asking the big questions. Seth Rollins versus Shinsuke Nakamura. So, and Hulk Hogan just sort of walked out right before they cut back from commercial. Yeah, one of WWE's biggest draws in their entire company history. The one that main evented WrestleMania 3 in front of 93,000 plus fans at the Pontiac Silverdome. Second highest drawing Mania of all time. Big megastar. Hulk Hogan. Yeah, that guy, that Hulk Hogan. Yeah, he was out there. They pretty much just had him accompany Ric Flair by the barricade, and we never saw him again. They aired a Firefly Funhouse skit before the match. Bray reintroduced Seth to his puppet friends. They did a deal with the rabbit getting demolished in a red cage by the dinosaur head. I just realized how lame I sound trying to genuinely recap all this. Anyway, the rabbit got killed, I guess. And then Bray said he would see Seth in Hell. Boy, did he ever. So Seth and Shinsuke wrestled for a few minutes. Seth did a couple dives to the outside. He's about to set up for the curb stomp. Then the lights went down. Seth Rollins magically teleports to the top of the ramp somehow. And then the Fiend puts him in the mandible claw and tosses him off the stage, which the camera missed entirely. Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon in a ladder match, where whoever can climb up and grab the other guy's termination papers gets to fire him on the spot. Wrestling logic, don't ask. Kevin's entrance was cut entirely, again because they tried to cram in way too much onto one show. Him and Shane did a very concise car wreck ladder match. Shane was gassed literally 30 seconds in. Dude's cardio's beyond abysmal. He also looked 150 years old out there, but what else is new? Shane did a big elbow drop through the announce table to Kevin. Kevin did a frog splash to Shane on the ladder on the outside, which looked pretty cool. Shane hit a coast-to-coast drop kick with the ladder into Kevin's face. And eventually Shane tried to climb up to get the contract, but he got cut off. Kevin powerbombed him onto a ladder in the corner, and Kevin climbed up and grabbed the termination contract. Well, he grabbed the briefcase, which contained the termination contract. And then he immediately picks Shane up, fires him, gives him a stunner, and that is how Shane is presumably fired. Now, I'm not sure if Shane's going to be temporarily written off of television or if this was just a permanent deal to take him away as an on-screen personality. Either way, I will not be watching main roster WWE anytime soon, so it doesn't really make a difference to me what they do. Provided he does not get drafted to NXT in the coming weeks, which, if he does, I might drink a gallon of bleach, but guess we shall see. In the most random 8-man tag, where 7 of the 8 men had entrances cut, and a match in which I had no idea who the participants were until the match was already in progress, AJ Styles, Randy Orton, Dolph Ziggler, and Robert Roode versus Heavy Machinery, The Miz, and Braun Strowman. They had a completely rushed tag match that went less than 5 minutes. I think Tucker Knight only had one thing to do in this match, that being a clothesline to take out a dude over the top rope, and he completely botched it. They did a chaotic breakdown toward the end. Strowman teased a fight with Tyson Fury. And then Strowman pinned Ziggler with a power slam. Afterwards, Tyson jumped the barricade and tried to get in the ring with Strowman, but security held him back. And, that's what the creative team came up for their Fox debut. They shoehorned 8 dudes into a cluster tag match where no one got over, just so they could tease a fight with Braun Strowman and Tyson Fury, which, if it does happen, will probably be at an overseas pay-per-view where the American audience could not possibly care about. So, way to go, guys. Roman Reigns versus Eric Rowan in a lumberjack match. Remember after that Clash of Champions show where I said I never want to see this match again? I was not being facetious there. I really did not want to ever see this match again. Anyway, I wrote down practically nothing about it. The only thing I could think the entire match is, I'm looking at these lumberjacks, and you got Hanson in a row. You got Ricochet. You got Shinsuke Nakamura. You got Chad Gable. You got Cesaro. I think they had Almas out there too. It's like, I see all these potential stars and all these great talents out there. And who are the two guys getting the big featured spotlight here? Roman Reigns and Eric Rowan. Like, literally, nothing has changed about the main roster WWE since I stopped watching back in January. They are still trying to make Roman Reigns happen in 2019, and they are apparently trying to make Eric Rowan happen again. Despite when they tried to give this guy a singles push before, it tanked entirely. Meanwhile, all those guys are standing out ringside. All the potential in the world for them to get over and be top stars. Here they are, standing around like dweebs. What a damn shame. And, the reason we're pushing Eric Rowan? I don't know. He's got a beard, pal. And he's big. You gotta push him to the moon. He's 300 pounds. Despite the fact that Rowan completely sucks. Anyway, match broke down at the end. Luke Harper came down and started beating dudes up. Roman did a big dive on everyone on the outside. Rowan gave Ali a powerbomb onto Roman. They did stuff in the ring for a minute. Harper tried to do a run-in and take out Roman, but Daniel Bryan hit a running knee. Looking back at all this, I have no idea why any of this was not a disqualification. And then Rowan went for the claw on Bryan, but Roman speared him and got the win. Yeah, of course Roman Reigns went over. Why wouldn't he? An absolutely nothing match. And in the main event, Brock Lesnar versus Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship. So, never mind. I was going to make a joke about the match being boring and having too many rest holds, but forget it. I don't have the energy. Anyway, they rang the bell. Kofi tries to get the jump on Brock immediately. Brock catches him. F5, 1, 2, 3. So, Brock wins the belt. Kofi completely vanishes into the air like a dork. They completely negated the 6-month title reign. So, way to go, Kofi. You're just complete and utter nothing on this show now. They did do this wonderful pan over to Mark Henry and Goldberg ringside after the match, where Mark's jaw is agape. He's flabbergasted by this whole ordeal. And meanwhile, standing next to him, Goldberg's got this smug look on his face. He's standing there like, of course Brock won the belt in under 10 seconds. Why wouldn't he? Funniest thing on the show by a country mile. So immediately afterwards, Rey Mysterio's music hits because Brock killed him on Monday with a bunch of Germans and F5s and stuff. And then accompanying him to the ring is Cain Velasquez. And, before I get into this too much, I think I should preface this by saying I don't watch UFC, nor have I ever seen a Cain Velasquez fight in my life. The announcers did at least explain to me that Cain was the guy who handed Brock his first MMA loss, and it was apparently for the UFC Heavyweight Championship, so that much I do know. Anyway, Cain did a brief takedown to Brock and started throwing punches at him before Brock scurried out of the ring. And if I'm putting this together correctly, they are teasing the idea of two UFC guys competing for a WWE championship at some point down the road. And while I'm not really dying to see that go down, I will at least say that if they have Kane under contract officially, then this could be a big title draw for them. I don't know when they would do it, presumably in Saudi Arabia, since that's a show where they like to throw out a bunch of big matches on the card to impress everyone overseas, even though nobody in the States could possibly care about that show. As of this current news cycle, however, there is still a bit of ambiguity over what Kane's WWE contract status is. And this is actually the portion of the news report that I wanted to take note of because I did think this was interesting. In an ESPN interview that Kane did a few days ago, this is according to Wrestling Inc., Dave Meltzer noted, he said he wasn't signed with WWE yet. However, Meltzer was told from WWE that Kane was indeed signed and said it made sense as they would not run an angle to this magnitude if they didn't already have the former UFC champion locked up, which in theory makes a lot of sense. However, in this same article, just a few sentences later, Joshua Hagman reports Velasquez has also repeatedly been in talks with AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, I'm still a little unclear here. Is Kane signed or isn't he? If he is, then I have no idea why you would try to blow this match off in a throwaway overseas pay-per-view in front of a Middle Eastern audience who really isn't going to know who Cain Velasquez is. If they are going to do this match, I think they need to do it at Survivor Series. I think they could have a great turnout for that event if they build up to that match over the next month and really make that program feel like a must-see. Hell, I'd even go as far as to say, have Kane squash Brock and win the title. Make it short, too. Yeah, someone's got to eventually be the roadblock for Brock's path of destruction, and God knows that it was going to be Seth Rollins. It sure ain't going to be Bray Wyatt anymore. Why not Cain Velasquez? Yeah, sure, it's sad that WWE has absolutely no top threat in their current product that can credibly challenge Brock, which means that they have to resort to former MMA guys to come in and work with Brock, but, well, you know, that's WWE in 2019 for you. What can you do? So, that was the Fox premiere of Friday Night SmackDown. Overall, I thought the show was, I don't know, it was easy to watch. I'll at least give it that. Thank God it was 2 hours. It didn't feel like I had to struggle to get through it. But at the end of the day, you know, when I look back at it in context now, what were the big takeaways from that show? They got over a professional boxer and an MMA fighter. Brock killed Kofi in under 10 seconds to win the title to set up a program with said MMA fighter. The Rock is still a bigger star than every WWE talent today, not even close. They threw out a bunch of their current guys, none of whom got over or really had any time to get anything over. And, you know, while I know it doesn't matter since we're already talking post-Hell in a Cell, but at the time of watching it, I didn't think the show did anything to hype up the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And they sure didn't announce anything for it after that. They did a little hype promo for it, but that was it. There was no card rundown. There was nothing added. It was just, hey, by the way, there's a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in 2 days. You should buy it. You know, despite that we have 40% of the card announced. I don't know. Most of the show felt like it was geared toward pumping up the Saudi Arabia show, which, as I mentioned already, no one in the United States gives a crap about that anyway. So, show was fine from an entertainment standpoint, but, you know, did it really do anything for me to keep me watching? No. I don't really think it did anything for the current talent roster either. Nothing I could really give him credit for. Okay. WWE Hell in a Cell, 2019. I'm going to preface this very quickly. I just want to be as honest with you as I can be. I said at the beginning of this news report, this has been a very, very busy week for me. And the weekend really didn't do much to help. And I know that there was a lot of big stuff that went down in the last week for professional wrestling. You had the Raw reunion show. You had the NXT and the AEW head-to-head, the first Wednesday Night War edition. You had the Fox premiere for Friday Night SmackDown, and you had the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view on Sunday. That's a lot to keep track of. And considering that I do 2 videos where I also do news reports, it's just really hard to get around to all that stuff. And I ended up watching all the shows, so I got caught up. But like I said, the weekend just really hit me hard. And I had to catch up with the SmackDown on the Sunday evening before watching the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And when I got home, I had to do a couple things. So I finished watching SmackDown by around 9. And I know the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view started at like 7:30. So finished watching SmackDown. I ate dinner. I was about to go to bed. Then I realized, damn it, I still have not watched Hell in a Cell. So I didn't know what they were going to do. I know that they only had 4 matches announced beforehand. Maybe some part of me wished that this would just be a very, very short pay-per-view. Maybe like a 3-hour show at the most. That didn't happen, unfortunately. So I watched the first 2 matches. And, I watched the first 2 matches because those were 2 of the matches that were announced for the pay-per-view. So it would stand clear that I would want to watch those shows since they advertise them in advance, to pay them their just dues. So I watched the first 2 matches. I skipped through a lot of the subsequent stuff. Then I watched the main event. And I watched the main event in complete and utter bewilderment. I really had a difficult time figuring out how I was going to talk about that main event. I was so baffled by the booking of it. I seriously threatened to delete everything I wrote down about this show and maybe just give you like a 5-minute synopsis of why WWE can't get anything right anymore. But then I realized that it would equate to me ranting and shouting about stuff for like 15 minutes, and I really don't feel like doing that. Instead, I'm going to very briefly run down the preliminary stuff, and then I'll give you my true and honest in-depth analysis of that main event. Because, boy, do I have a thing or two to say about that. And maybe I should preface this too by saying there's not a single thing that I wrote down about that main event as far as the action goes. I watched it with my mouth agape, like I said, complete bewilderment, had no idea what to expect. Then they gave me what they gave me, and the match went down the way that it did. And when it was over, I was like, I really have nothing to say about that. That might be the most baffling WWE match I think I've ever seen in my life. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. We'll get to that. Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch in a Hell in a Cell match for the Raw Women's Championship. If you are judging this show on the heaviest curve imaginable, this is by far the best match of the night. And I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. They actually ended up doing a lot of cool stuff in there. But a lot of it was just big spots with weapons. And there wasn't really any ebb and flow throughout. Neither performer really did any long-term selling. They didn't really have any story they were trying to tell. I mean, the story was pretty much, hey, that weapon looks cool. Let me wedge this into the cage to set up a spot that'll happen 20 minutes from now. Like I said, not saying I hated anything here. I guess I just wasn't expecting a no-sell spot fest, and that's a lot of what I got. They did have an incredibly stupid drop toe hold spot onto an open steel chair leg. Don't do that, everyone. I guess the other notable spot here was the deal where Becky put Sasha on a steel chair in the corner of the ring that was held up by kendo sticks. They took like 15 minutes to set this up, and I really don't understand why, if all it was going to amount to was a drop kick off the apron. I don't know. It seemed like they took forever to set something up that really just didn't pay off in execution. Anyway, in the end, Becky gave Sasha the Bexploder off the top rope onto chairs in the ring. She put her in the disarmer, and Sasha tapped. So, they didn't do a belt change. A little bit of a shocking finish, but, that's what WWE does. There's a character that disappears from television for 6 months, and She comes back, turns heel, and then she loses. Sounds about accurate. Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan versus Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. This match was made into a tornado tag prior to the show, and boy, if you ever need the prime definition of a match where dudes did a lot of stuff, that is exactly what this match was. Rowan, Harper, Bryan, and Reigns did a lot of stuff. Some of it looked good. Some of it looked very sloppy. There was a lot of clusteriness to this match. The finish was pretty awesome, I will give it that. Harper gave Bryan a series of overhead release throws. Bryan landed on his feet on the third throw. Roman gave Harper a Superman punch. Bryan hit the running knee, and then Reigns got the spear for the 3. And yes, for the record, he did pin Luke Harper. So, much like I was talking about with the Sasha Banks deal, a character who has not been on television for about 6 months comes back, makes his triumphant return, and then immediately loses in the following pay-per-view. Sounds about accurate. And then after the match, Bryan goes for a handshake, but pulls away, goes for a hug. Reigns hesitates, but eventually gives in, and, well, that was it. No swerve, no Bryan heel turn, nothing. I'm presuming that this is also the blow-off to the godforsaken Roman Reigns summer saga. You can only hope for it. So, at this point in the show, 2 of our 4 advertised matches have already taken place. And knowing that these numbskulls were going to try and drag the show out for as long as humanly possible, I was fixated to tune out pretty much any of the other filler crap they put on. I will say that I was willing to give it a shot to see if they could impress me with the impromptu matches. And then they came up with what they came up with. Randy Orton versus Ali. This is a completely random TV match that they set up on the pre-show. It was just okay. I yawned at least a half a dozen times within the course of this match. Randy just beat and on this poor Ali fella for like 90% of it. Ali made a very, very short comeback at the end, and he tried for a leaping move through the ropes, but Randy gave him the RKO and pinned him like an idiot. They did actually have this really cool spot at the end where Ali countered the RKO with a springboard handstand, and he tried to cradle him to get the surprise pin. I think they missed a golden opportunity to have Ali get the upset win over Randy, but, well, you know, Randy's got to go over, I guess, because, well, you know, why would you want to create new stars in 2019 by having a young guy beat an established veteran? No, yeah, we wouldn't want to do that. Got to put over Randy Orton still. Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss versus the Kabuki Warriors for the women's tag titles, which apparently still exist. During the entrances to this match, Corey Graves is sure to point out on commentary that not only have Kairi and Asuka done practically nothing to earn this title shot, but the fact that at one point in time they were both extremely hot and popular wrestlers. Key phrase being one point in time. And yes, no, I'm not joking. He actually said this. This is like a verbatim statement that Corey Graves made while they were doing the preliminary entrances. I guess I also should not exclude Nikki from that equation as well, because there was a point in NXT where Nikki was like the hottest thing on that program, and now she is just another wrestler lost in the shuffle on the main roster because WWE sucks. It also should be noted that apparently Asuka and Kairi are heels. Epic fail. So, we're barely an hour into the show by this point. I was within seconds of falling asleep. I really didn't care for anything I saw in the first 2 minutes of the match, so I skipped to the end. And in the end, Alexa does a somersault plancha onto Kairi. Asuka shoots some green mist into Nikki's face behind the ref's back, and she gets the pin. So your new WWE Women's Tag Team Champions are the Kabuki Warriors. If you care. I don't. And neither did anyone watching in the building. The OC versus the Viking Raiders and Braun Strowman. Another TV match that I skipped through 75% of. Strowman ended up running wild at the end. set up AJ for the power slam, and then the OC ran in for a DQ in this 6-man on a show that I was already becoming mildly to increasingly infuriated watching. I also wrote down a derogatory statement that I will not read here for the sake of keeping the show family-friendly. I did learn 2 things in this match, however. Number 1, apparently the deal they did with Braun Strowman and Tyson Fury was not a one-off angle from SmackDown. They are indeed actually going to do this match at some point. Like I said, probably in Saudi Arabia. Well, no one will want to see it, but they're going to do the match. So at least you can credit them for minor storyline advancement. Take it for what it's worth. And the second thing I have learned is that Hansen and Rowe are actually now referred to as Eric and Ivar. Because not only did Vince change their names from the War Raiders to the Viking Raiders, which is dumb in and of itself, but he actually renamed Hansen and Rowe to Eric and Ivar. Because if it already isn't ludicrous enough that we have multiple Erics on the main roster, including a guy an Eric Young, who has not been seen on this program in God knows how long, they also have a character named Ivar. Because this creative team is paid to come up with creative and exclusive names for their talents. And the best that they could come up with. A cesspool of creative writers that sit in a boardroom for an entire day to come up with this crap. The best name that they could come up with to rename Hansen is to give him the name Ivar. Oh my God. What can you say at this point? Just, it's WWE. Now, as I said, the match ended in a disqualification. Why they couldn't just have Strowman pin an OC member to at least put him over here, I couldn't tell you. I guess that's what happens when you try to protect guys that Paul Heyman likes. Only problem is that nobody on earth cares about the boring, bland cue balls known as Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, and AJ has not done anything interesting in WWE since his feud with John Cena several years ago. So, there you go. King Corbin versus Chad Gable. Apparently Corbin and Gable had a very good match on TV a couple weeks back. I cannot confirm this as I have not seen that match. I don't know what they did in their original TV match that people thought was out of this world remarkable, but this was far from it. I don't remember anything that happened. I actually left the match running while I did a couple things around the house. Corbin practically had Gable grounded with holds for like 80% of it. I left the room to brush my teeth and put my pajama clothes on. Corbin's got him in a rest hold. I left the room to wash my face in the bathroom. Corbin still got him in a hold. I briefly left the room to pet my meowing cat who was sitting outside my door scratching and squealing away. I came back and hoped that the match would be done in the 5-minute time span I was gone, and Corbin and Gable are still doing stuff. And the announcers are constantly making jokes that Gable is short. Apparently that's the gimmick. Very original. And then in the finish to the match, Corbin tried to use his staff to DQ himself because what the show really needed more of is disqualifications. The ref pulls it away, Gable rolls up Corbin and got the schoolboy pin. And they actually announced that the winner of this match is Shorty Gable. Unbelievable. It was at this point, upon hearing the ring announcer and the commentary team bury Gable for like 10 minutes, that I was fed up with the show entirely. There was one match that I wanted to see, and it was the Bray Wyatt-Seth Rollins main event, so I skipped right to it. There was apparently a deal with the 24/7 title that I didn't care about, and there was also a Charlotte Bayley title match that I also did not care about. I presume that it was a little bit better than the match they did last month where Bayley just beat Charlotte in like 3 seconds in her hometown, but nope, didn't care, didn't watch it. Then we get the main event. Seth Rollins versus The Fiend in a Hell in a Cell match for the Universal Championship. The only reason that I tuned into this show. There's a lot I could say about this match. There's a lot I probably should say about this match. But to be honest with you, I'm not even really fixated on anything that happened in the match. Like I said, I didn't take notes about this. I just watched what they did. The match ended. The show ended. And the last thing that I heard at WWE Hell in a Cell 2019, the final nail in the coffin to this show that really just put over the current state of this product in 2019. They fade the camera to black, and what is the last thing that you hear on this show? AEW. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, ever since the Undertaker-Brock Lesnar WrestleMania match, I lost a lot of passion for this company. Because when The Undertaker lost to Brock, and they ended the streak, and they showed the reaction to the crowd, it really just hit me that one day that WWE just doesn't get it. They are so into the reactionary business now that they would rather sacrifice 20 plus years of investment into a character just so they could get a reaction. And it's like, that match between Lesnar and Taker is still memorable to this day. But it's not memorable for any good reason. And it's like, how do you bounce back from something like that? You know, you killed off one of your biggest WrestleMania attractions just for the sake of getting the people to respond to it. And it's like, when you look back at it 5 years after the fact, the one thing that you just keep asking yourself over and over again, was it really worth it? And for me, I don't think it ever was. Because every time The Undertaker's come back to wrestle a match after that, it just hasn't had the same effect. And for someone like me, The Undertaker was my favorite wrestler of all time. And he still is to this day. Because when I grew up as a kid, The Undertaker was my top guy. And I know a lot of people have differing opinions in the matter. You know, some people look back at Taker's career and say that he's responsible for the burial of a lot of guys and how he didn't help elevate talents when he probably should have. And, you know, you can look back at history and say, yeah, maybe some of that's true. You know, maybe they should have had Taker put guys over more than he did. But you can't deny the fact that The Undertaker was a big deal. He was, and still is to this day, one of the biggest stars that WWE has. But it's more than that. It's more than the Undertaker-Brock Lesnar deal that killed my passion for pro wrestling. Because then I look at the burial of the original Bray Wyatt character. And I think about everything that WWE did to build this character up from the beginning. And they completely ruined him. And it sucks. Because when the original Bray Wyatt character debuted, I'm not talking about the Fiend character, I'm talking about the 2013 Bray Wyatt, the Wyatt family character. That was so innovative. And it really marked something that I think stood to the test, that Bray Wyatt can really get anything over. He is an extremely great talent. But the Bray Wyatt character was different from anything that WWE was doing at the time. And I look at the track record of what they did with him. He lost to John Cena at WrestleMania. And the next year he lost to Taker at Mania. And then I think the next year they had him get punked out by The Rock. Then the next year he lost to Randy Orton for the WWE title. I don't even think he was at the 2018 Mania. It's like, how do you do that? How do you take a character that you put so much time and investment into and completely ruin it in a very short time span? And it really does stand to WWE's lack of star power in 2019 and why they failed to ever develop any real stars in their product. And it also goes to the understanding that WWE just can't help but ruin every golden nugget they come across, whether it's their creation or not. And when this Fiend character debuted, there's a part of me that knew, deep down I knew, it was only a matter of time before they would completely crap on it and before they completely screw the pooch. And I know giving WWE the benefit of the doubt is like sacrilege in 2019 because you just know, it's just evident that they're going to mess it up eventually. But the Fiend character was so creative and it was so cool and the fans liked it. And it's like they put so much time and effort into getting it over throughout the year. And you just knew in the back of your mind that they were going to mess something up. That they were going to rush to it too soon. They were going to, put the cart before the horse. And pretty soon, the character would pretty much amount to nothing. Another failed test experiment on their part. Now, granted, I was expecting it to last a little bit longer than what ended up happening, but nevertheless, they did what they did in this main event. And that's really all I could think of when this match was over. I watched the whole thing, and when it ended, I thought back to the original Bray Wyatt character that they crapped on. I thought back to, the fact that WWE just doesn't have any star power in their company, and when they do come across something that they could potentially make something out of, they ruin it. Intentionally. And that's the thing that bugs me about it. There was no reason to do what they did in this match. There was no reason that they needed to protect Seth Rollins here. Because, I've been talking about The Fiend for a lot. Let's talk about Seth Rollins for a second here. Seth Rollins has been massively booed throughout the course of this year. This guy's not been a good top champion for them. He was such a horrendous Universal Champion the first time that they had to scrap their original plans and put the belt on Brock Lesnar short term just to rebuild a feud that they already previously paid off at Mania this year to do again at SummerSlam. And it's like 2 experiments with this guy. You put the belt on him twice. You push him as a top star twice. And it failed both times. Why? Because the character's boring. He's got no character. He's got no relatable personality traits. He's just a guy. And meanwhile, you got the Fiend, who's not boring, who's a fresh character that he could do so much with. It was just, there was no sugarcoating your way around this. You had to put the belt on him. You had to give Bray Wyatt the championship here. There was no alternative. Like I said in the pre-show or the preview to the show that I did back in the review series, the only alternative method was that you have to have The Undertaker do a run-in. I mean, if you were going to end this match in a no contest, if you were going to walk out of this match without the Fiend carrying the championship, you needed to have something. And basically, the moral to the story here, their payoff, their genius idea for this match, was to have Seth Rollins squash the Fiend, bury him underneath rubble, and smash his face in with a sledgehammer for a match to end in either a disqualification or a no contest. I really don't know. It's like, it's baffling to me. Like, I'm having trouble finding the words to describe how I feel right now. I'm not surprised because I knew that it was only a matter of time before the WWE would run this character into the ground. I knew that it was not going to last. And it's like, after the show was over and the fans are booing and they're, chanting restart the match, they're chanting for refunds. Like I said already, they're chanting for AEW. It's just a complete and utter disaster of a main event. And it's like, the only thing I could think of after the show was over, I'm like, okay, what do you do now? All right, so you buried the Fiend character entirely. Seth Rollins is going to be the biggest heel in your company now, even though you're going to push him as a top babyface and it's not going to work. I really don't know if Bray Wyatt's going to have a lot of steam following this match. Maybe the people will pop for him for resentment purposes. They'll just turn him into the biggest babyface in the world because they know that WWE is intentionally trying to sabotage him and the fans. But it's like, where do you go from here? What does this character do now? He couldn't beat Seth Rollins in a cage match. So who can he beat? I don't know. I've never been so speechless, so thoughtless following a WWE show. I just have no concept. I cannot wrap my brain around why they came up with the finish that they did here. Yeah, it's like it books itself on paper. Seth Rollins is a crappy champion. The Fiend is your top guy in the company right now. He's the most creative and innovative character that you have. The people are solely and unanimously behind him. There's no question about that. Why you would not have the Fiend squash Rollins and win the belt here is just like, I don't get it. It's a given that you would do this. But for whatever reason, they want to keep the belt on Rollins. And it's like, okay, whatever. So what are you going to do, a rematch with these guys at the next pay-per-view? You're going to try to do a rematch at the overseas show? You're going to have Rollins pin the Fiend there or something? I don't know. Seth Rollins, man. Yeah, just think back too with him. Another character that had all the star potential in the world, and they completely ruined him. You know what I think back with Seth Rollins? You know what I still remember to this day? WrestleMania 31. Seth Rollins cashing in Money in the Bank to win the WWE Championship in that Roman Reigns-Brock Lesnar catastrophe of a main event. That was a case where WWE booked themselves into a corner and they managed to find a way to take themselves out of it. They had Seth Rollins cash in Money in the Bank. The people got a good reaction out of it. They got a champion that they could get behind, and it was a great way to build up Seth Rollins as a top star. That was something that they did right. And I remember the people getting so behind Rollins there, because when that theme music hit and Rollins came dashing down the aisle to hit the curb stomp and cash in the Money in the Bank contract to win the belt, I just remember those people going ape crap for that. It was such a cool WrestleMania moment. And I still remember it to this day. Despite the fact that I might not be the biggest Seth Rollins fan, and I never have been, I cannot deny the fact that that was a really, really cool moment. It's like 5 years later. 4 years later, I guess, because that was WrestleMania 31 was 2015? God, my mind is so scraggy right now. But 4 years later, Seth Rollins, still a top guy for your company. He's your top champion, presumably. I mean, I think the Universal title is still a bigger deal than the WWE World title. At least that's the way they book it. And he's just a guy now. The people don't like him. I think they resent the way he treats people on social media. He acts like a bad guy all the time, but then he tries to come out and portray himself as a heroic babyface on camera, and it's a dynamic that doesn't work. It's just too much of a stark contrast. I don't know. The main roster WWE is in complete shambles right now. And watching this SmackDown show and watching this Hell in a Cell show makes me realize why I am just so content and so satisfied with sticking with NXT and sticking with AEW. And you know what? I'll even say this. I'm not the biggest fan of MLW's product, but I will take their show over anything main roster WWE is doing. Because say what you want about the production gaffes and the Bush League presentation of MLW's product. Like, I know they're not a billion-dollar corporation, so they kind of have to fit within what their budget allows them to do. but at least their stories make a little more sense than WWE. I don't leave an MLW show. I don't finish watching an MLW show and think, man, that gravely offended me as a fan. That was some really, really bad programming. I just kind of like, yeah, that show wasn't all that good, but it is what it is. It's a glorified indie show, so what can you expect? I don't know what I expect out of main roster WWE. Yeah, I only watch their pay-per-views. And like I said, I only watched the premiere on Fox because I was interested to see what they would do. I genuinely thought the SmackDown show was good. Didn't really, like I said, it didn't really do a lot for their current talent pool, but the show wasn't bad or anything. But this Hell in a Cell pay-per-view was bad. And I usually grade on a curve too. I don't really hate a lot of things. At least I mean, I know I sound kind of condescending when I review and recap all this stuff. I do a lot of mild complaining, but it's like, that's just me trying to be a jerk and have some fun with it, joke around a little bit. But no, this is no joke, man. This Hell in a Cell show was bad. And I don't really know what any redeeming qualities were. I mean, like I said, from a very, very high curve standpoint, if you're grading it on that scale, the Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch Hell in a Cell opener was the best thing on the show, but even that in and of itself really wasn't all that great. It was just girls hitting each other with weapons for like 15 minutes. It kind of got repetitive and boring after a while. Other than that, nothing else on this show was really good. The main event, I don't know. Some people are going to say that this is the worst match in WWE in 2019. I wouldn't sit there and argue against it. A lot of people are going to say this is probably the worst WWE match of all time. I don't really think I'd go that far. I will say this. I don't really think that this is the worst match of all time for WWE, but in terms of a match that did the most damage to a character, that completely destroyed something that they had going that was a crowd favorite, that could have been something that could have been, this is bad. I mean, I don't know how you recover from this. It was just, I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. I really expected them to do something better than what they did. So there you go. That's your Hell in a Cell recap. I really don't know how anyone could take anything good away from it. I mean, we'll see how they recover from it if they ever do. I don't know how the Fiend character goes in a positive direction from here. I have no hope for Seth Rollins. I mean, I'm not talking about the actual man Seth Rollins. I'm talking about the character Seth Rollins. If this guy is not a heel for the remainder of his career following this match, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, like I said, WWE will try to force the fans to cheer him, and they'll keep him babyface. They'll program against him, against other bad guys in the future, but he won't be a babyface. I honestly think Rollins is a heel for life after this match. And it sucks because it's to no fault of his own. I mean, he's just going out there and doing what he was told to do. This is just Vince and creative having absolutely no concept of how to create stars in their product anymore. So, there you have it. And with that all said, everyone, that's it for the FSWR episode this week. I'm sorry if you were expecting like news reports or anything like that, but like I said, I just didn't really have a lot of time to get to it. So, I will definitely have more to report on, especially main roster stuff for next week. I am interested to see how this whole thing follows up. I'm wondering if this turns into a case where the fans just cheer Bray Wyatt out of resentment for WWE. I don't know if this is like a big automatic turnoff for them and they're going to draw more viewers to AEW out of this. WWE fans are sort of weird in that sense. They're very passionate for this product, and it's like the fans that have the mentality that WWE can do no wrong, they're not going to watch AEW no matter what. But maybe they do turn off fans from this entirely. Maybe this main event becomes one of the biggest detriments to WWE's product. The fact that they buried a character that fans were genuinely behind. Like one of the only redeeming qualities about their product right now. I don't know. We'll see what they do on Raw. We'll see how things follow up, and you could always cross your fingers and hope for the best, but WWE really shot themselves in the foot on this show, and all to their fault. They didn't want to have Bray Wyatt win the title, and they came up with one of the most ludicrous finishes to a match that I think I've ever seen in my life. So, there you have it. Thank you everyone for watching. If you want to contribute to this channel in the future and stay posted for FSWR videos, please make sure you comment, rate the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys for the Review Series edition this coming Friday.